Welcome back. So in this one, we're going to talk about aliasing columns, which is just a fancy way of saying renaming columns. So sometimes the columns in our database tables have names that are cryptic at best. They're very difficult to understand. It's very difficult to know based on the name of that column what's even in the column. And for technical folks like us, data analysts and data scientists, that may not be such a big deal. We may know what's in there, but our role is so often to kind of be the liaison between this very technical world of the databases of databases and end users who just want data that they can make decisions from. So a part of that is going to be renaming these very cryptically named columns in a user-friendly way, such that somebody in a business who's not necessarily a technical person can decipher like what's even in that column. This is a general theme we'll return to throughout the course, that data in databases is often stored and organized, named in such a way that only a very technical person can make sense of it, and a big part of our job as analysts is to be the translators and the transformers, to transform that data in such a way that a non-technical person can still use it. So without further ado, we'll get into the mechanics of renaming database columns. So we'll use the human resources.employee table as kind of the basis of this exercise, as we've done the last couple times. So I'll click the plus sign next to that table, then the plus sign next to columns. And instead of using our little magic trick about using the Management Studio application itself to select the top 1,000 records and generate that code for us automatically kind of as a starting place, we're actually going to more or less write this one from scratch. So to do that, we'll click New Query, and then of course we'll type the select keyword to start. All of our queries are going to start with select, and then we have to tell it what to select. So you could type these column names, but unless you're a really, really fast typist, which I am definitely not, it's much easier to just copy the column names right out of Object Explorer. So to do that, you just left-click, say, organization level. That'll be the first column that we'll choose. And then click Control-C, and then click in your editor, and hit Control-V. And there's our column. And then we'll just type a comma at the end of it, and we'll also maybe pick job title, maybe hire date, and vacation hours. That's always a fun topic. And then the other keyword that we have to have is from, because we have to tell the query what table to pull these columns from. And fortunately, you won't have to type the name of the table either. You can use the same technique. Left-click it in the Object Explorer, hit Control-C, hit Control-V. Now, if I've done everything right, we should be able to hit Execute and see a query, see the results of our query. So there we are. Now we have a query that we mostly wrote from scratch. And in this case, the column names are pretty reasonable, right? These are not as cryptic as many as I've seen in my career. I would say that the AdventureWorks database does a better job than most of making the column names readable. But in the real world, oftentimes these names will be abbreviations or codes or things that you just have to have worked with the data a long time to recognize and understand. So we're going to do a little bit of practicing just renaming these columns in maybe even an arbitrary way, but the techniques will apply to any columns you might come across. There are a few different techniques you can use to rename a column. There is as. So if you want to name organization level to organization LVL, so in this case we're actually making it less readable, you type the word as, and then if we run our query again, you'll see organization level has been changed to organization LVL. Another technique you can use is to simply omit the as keyword altogether and just have a space between the column as it is coming out of the database and your new name for it. So if we run that, same deal. I personally don't like this because it's not explicit. You're not making it clear what you're doing. There's just this name and then a space and then another name. I prefer as if you're going to use this, if you're going to go this route. And then the other technique that I like the best is to actually put the name, the new name of the column that you've chosen first. So to do that, you just type the new name, then the equal sign, and then the name of the column as it is coming out of the database. And that to me is clearest, because the actual name of the column as it will appear in your output comes first, and then the name of the column as it appeared in the database is second. But any of these are equivalent. They all work the same. Choose whichever one you prefer. So now a quick note about naming columns. Like, what can you name a column? What can't you name a column? There are some rules. You can't just name a column anything. For example, if I start this name with the number 2 and I try to run it, it says incorrect syntax. SQL does not like a column that begins with a number. It wants a column name to begin with a letter or a character that is considered an alpha character, like an @ symbol, a pound, or an underscore. Also, you cannot have spaces in your column names. So if I click in between the Z and the A here, put a space, and run the query, it doesn't like that either. Now, these rules can be circumvented, however, if you surround the column names with brackets. And if you notice, when you use the auto-generated code that comes out of SQL when you right-click and select top 1,000 rows, or when you copy columns directly from Object Explorer, they come with these brackets around them anyway. And the brackets turn out to be really handy if you want to insert spaces in your column names, which is a very common use case. Often business users of your data, consumers of your data, aren't really comfortable with this concept of the names all being one long string of characters. They're used to reading regular text where words are separated with spaces. So let's say instead of renaming organization level to organization LVL, we just want to rename it to organization level, but with a space between the two words. So now that we've surrounded our name with brackets, we can just put a space in between. And now we'll change the spelling back to level, run that. And now we have this nice friendly looking column name that has a space between organization and level. So there are a few more obscure rules pertaining to renaming or aliasing columns, but what we've covered here will cover the vast majority of situations that you'll encounter. The bottom line is, if all you need to do is rename a column without introducing special characters or spaces in between words, then you shouldn't need brackets. If you do need to include spaces in between the words of the column name or throw in special characters, just surround the name with brackets and you should be good to go. So up next, we're going to start talking about not just pulling data as it exists in the database, but creating new data that will appear in our select query output. So I'll see you